Hi everybody, welcome to the Sunday service.
What?
We've woken Drew up, I think.
You caught me modelling again, didn't you?
Sorry?
Caught me modelling again.
Yeah, caught you modelling again. Sorry, we've had a bit of a disrupted February this year, but we're kind of back on track now. So it's good to have Drew back in the fold again. How are you doing, Drew?
All right, yeah, not too bad at all. Not too bad at all. Expensive weekend with models, wasn't it, for me?
Sorry?
An expensive weekend for models for me.
Right. What have you been buying?
Well, I got the I finally got hold of the Academy A10,
right,
and then I got the Tack-on Apache, and I went, yeah, that's all I'm going for. And then I saw the Tack-on Sergeant York and went, go on then. And then I saw the Edward Type 22-0 and went, oh no, go on then. So yeah, it was. Let's say the scale model shed made out handsomely yesterday from me. But
what's that work out? That's got to be at least about 250 quid's worth of kit.
£231. No, in actual fact, it wasn't all that, because it was £231, including one of the big new VMS satins. So no, it would have worked out about 250, I think, but with you know, with the discounts they do and stuff like that, it came to 230 quid. You know, it's just after payday. It's probably the only models I'm going to buy this, you know, certainly this month, I would think. So you know, if you can't do that on your hobby occasionally,
no, absolutely,
you know,
absolutely.
Why? What's the point? What's the point in it all, eh? If you can't do that occasionally,
what's it all about, Alfie?
What's it all about, eh? If you can't do that occasionally, what's it all about? So yeah, it was, and I could have spent more as well. They had the Tack-on Fire Scout double kit, the helicopters double kit there yesterday, and I was like, oh, I was very, very close. Very, very close to that, which would be a couple of very nice little models they would make in 35th scale. I had a look inside the box, and they're only sort of, you know, that long each, which is
what's the subject again?
Sorry,
what's the subject again?
The I think it's MQ-8. Is it the Fire Scout, the little Scout US Navy Scout helicopter?
Yes.
The unmanned Scout helicopter. It comes as 2 kits. You get 2 kits in the box, and I had a look inside the box, and I was very, very tempted, but I did manage to resist. But I reserve the right to change my mind in the next week or two. But yeah, so finally got the A10, and you know, we're you know, immediately started.
Well, we're going to have a look at that during the show. Powell says my sound is. He says apparently my sound is quite muted.
It sounds all right to me, but
hang about. I think that's because my microphone fell off.
That'll be why then.
Yeah. Is that better, pal? There we go. Yeah, so we're going to look at the Academy 48 scale A10. It's an A10C, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah. And we'll also kind of have a look at some other bits and pieces tonight.
Yeah, I mean, I got started on this sort of straight away. So at the moment, I've got what you'd call a big box of
All right, let's dive into it then. Let's dive into
yeah,
it.
it's just basically a big box of sub assemblies, and at the moment, because I haven't done any paintwork on it at all. So the interior here, I've removed all of the detail from the consoles and the instrument panel, because in due course that's going to get some 3D printed, 3D resin side consoles and instrument panel. I think these are intended for the Hobby Boss kit. I did a fit check, and I'll fit this. What was that?
It's me blowing my nose. Sorry.
Oh, yeah. So yeah, that's part of the interior, and I've got an Ares or Ares, whatever you want to call it.
Ares.
Bang seat there. So but yeah, it's so that's all
tidy.
It's beautifully tooled. It's, like I say, this this fuselage part here, this is all one part, to which I've just added the overwing fairings there, and I built the tail yesterday, and sort of and I just added that sort of literally 10 minutes ago. But yeah, it's just, you know, largely it just sort of clips together, you know. It's so yeah, that's and then you got the obviously that's a one-piece slide mold as well, with just a lower piece there that has to be added in, and then the idea is that you will add the hot section of the engines would slide in like so.
So those engines are one-piece moldings.
That's one piece, yeah.
Incroyable.
Well, to be fair, this little the underside of the pylons here is a separate piece, but the actual, all of the nacelle is one piece. Is a one-piece molding. Now, like I said on my because I've put some entries on my blog. One-piece slide tooling does not mean there are no seams to deal with.
No.
So with this one, there's a seam along the engine here that needs to be removed on each side, and on the fuselage, there was a seam along the center line here, and also a lateral seam along each side here that needs to be removed. It's very nicely done. It was literally the work of minutes to remove all those seams. But yeah, it just, I don't know if you remember with the Tamiya Tomcat, a lot of people were caught out by the engine nacelles.
Yeah.
Where there was there's quite a prominent slide mold seam along those that a lot of people sadly missed. I caught it very late on in the game and dealt with it. But it's one of those little things where if you're not careful, when something's slide molded, look for seams, because there will be seams that need dealing with. Now, the upside to having these slide mold is that the seams there, you can deal with them and there won't be any ghost seams down the line or anything like that, because it's one piece of plastic. The downside can be if the mold alignment isn't perfect, where detail crosses the seam, that's then set. That's, you know, you can't alter that. That's, so if it's misaligned, it will remain misaligned, shall we say, without a great deal of work. But yeah, it's just, it does pay to check these things as you go. And it's just the kind of assembly you get with it, where the wings here will just clip into place like so. absolutely. Well, it's pretty spectacular, especially considering this is like £35, I think.
Yeah, I was going to say, how much is it? £35. That's quite.
You know, that is, it's exceptional. You can see that it's, obviously it's going to have to be pushed into place when you add glue.
Yeah.
But you can see it's a pretty firm.
Yep.
And then when you, obviously there's a multi-part forward fuselage there, which is very flimsy and isn't holding together at all without glue, along with a bottom piece and a nose cone that will go into place. So yeah, and then there's a very, very big sort of joining section that will plug into the back of here, and will allow that to plug very firmly into the main fuselage.
Do you think that's in order to facilitate a NAW-10?
Do you know what? I'm uncertain. I would say there's 2 pilots in the box, so it would, it's not beyond the realms of possibility, but it's more, I think, for the potential for an A10A
Right.
down the line, where you've got this separate spine insert, which would have the GPS and stuff on it. If they do decide to do an NAW-10, I will not have any complaints whatsoever, because it's my favourite. It's my favourite variant of the A10, albeit there was only ever one of them. But yeah, you can. So that'll obviously go on there in due course. It's actually surprisingly, it's not as big as I was expecting. It's it's quite a handleable sort of size. Now, it was the intakes are too shallow. This is a problem that has been highlighted all the way through so far since the model was first sort of announced. So Phase Hanger, our very own Mr. Reeves at Phase Hanger, has got a set of new intakes and stuff to go in here. Now, I wasn't sure if they were going to get to me in time, but Mike's told me they're en route, so they will get here in time. But prior to that, today I was on my 3D printer, and I just made some little inserts for the intakes themselves to sort of establish the correct depth. So to deepen them by about 5.5 millimeters, I think it required. So I made them myself. So it would have just literally deepened them without correcting any of the detail. But again, it's the joy of 3D printers, isn't it? That took me about 10 minutes to design, a couple of hours to print, and then it just all assembles and you can sand it through. As it is, that's pretty much redundant on mine, because I've got a set of the Phase Hanger resin parts en route. I've also got the Master Models etched cannon barrel en route as well. So,
yeah, a couple of questions here. Paul Krupovich asks, raised rivets on the rear fuselage?
Yes, all this area here from here back, it's all raised all over it, as on the real aircraft.
Yeah.
Very finely raised.
And Alan Richardson says, Drew, mine, well, it's Drew without an E, so perhaps he's talking to another Drew. Mine turned up today. Has yours got a slight step on the top of the one-piece fuselage?
Well, yeah, that's what I was talking about, was that seam there that needs to be dealt with. Like I say, it's a one-piece fuselage, but that still means there are multi-part seams. There are seams that need to be dealt with. So yeah, there was a seam all along here, and one along here on both sides that needs to be dealt with. It's the work of minutes, but you do have to then pop over and restore the detail to it. So yeah, like I say, the one-piece moldings are very clever, but they are not a.
They're not foolproof.
It's very clever, but it's not foolproof, and it does require work. But you can generally see, I mean, the way these engines, the engine nacelles just pop into place there. Look, I mean, it's certainly a much better fit than any previous.
Yeah. Exactly. Mike Williams asked, Drew, what's the GAU gun muzzle like? Will it need a master turned brass replacement?
Well, I've ordered one, so
right, okay.
In actual fact, there it is. It's a one piece. It's a one piece molding, and the cannon barrels are actually hollow. So it's actually it's very, very nice considering the limitations of the process used to make it, injection molding. Again, I would say it's one of the best one piece A10 cannon barrels I've ever seen. However, will it be better replaced by master if you want to gild the lily? Yes, absolutely. And mine is en route as we speak. So clearly, I've decided it is worth the effort. Now, the only real thing I've seen so far in terms of fit that I wasn't massively impressed with was the underside of the wheelbase. They fit beautifully there, but along the leading edge here, it's not a great fit. That said, it's it's hardly going to be the work of more than a few minutes to fill and sand that, is it? So it's but the fit to the wing along here and here is just pretty much flawless. So I'll take that. If it was like one or the other, if I press it together, I can get it to fit well, but it needs a bit more work there then. So I will take an imperfect fit here that's easy to sand over.
Do you think it's one of those things that once you actually apply a bit of solvent, it probably cures itself?
It may well do. I will and I will sort of update you in due course if that's what happened.
Right, we've got a question here. Let's have a look. I've forgotten where it was now. Oh, for goodness sake, we did have a comment here. Never mind.
You've got all these. You got a lot of different Mavericks and ECM pods and targeting pods and things like that. It is a full up A10C. So it is a full up A10C. And that is what you're getting in the box. If you want to do an A10A from this, you're either going to have to wait for them to release an A10A, or you're going to have some work on your hands. Not massive. I mean, it's the A10A to the A10C was lots of little details, shall we say.
John Connolly says, "Hi Drew, nice kit, but a few minor fit issues, but still the best A10 kit."
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, thus far it's the clear leader in A10s. I would suggest in pretty much any scale. So no, Mike, we can't.
Yeah, and Mike Reeves is saying, "What did I miss? Can you start over?" No.
Yeah, you missed me promoting your products, Mike.
Yeah, exactly. If you can't be bothered to turn up, then
that's on you. Because I didn't know if they were going to make it, Mike. I did do my own little bit of 3D printing earlier, like you said, but now those are pretty much redundant, so they'll get chucked to one side, and I'll wait for yours to turn up. So somebody there, Crazy Loca, saying overall rating. I'm gonna give it an A minus. It's a solid 8 out of 10 from me. It's a solid 8 out of 10. Brian, no, you can't see the box art because it's full of the box lid is full of parts. So
bits. Yeah.
I can't. I can't. I'm afraid.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, that's you know, I've been waiting for this. We all know from my previous discussions, I've been waiting for this since it was announced, more or less. So to be able to get my hands on it yesterday, and then, like I said, immediately sit down and start building was great. And I mean, I love Academy kits. I kind of it befuddles me that people are always saying, oh, you know, I wonder if they're going to get so and so right. I wonder how the tooling. It's like they haven't really dropped the ball in a decade. You know, they make some mistakes in accuracy, but in terms of tooling, you know, they haven't dropped the ball for a long time. Mm-hmm. And as Craig Sargent says, I mean, it's one of 2 48 scale A10s due in the next year or so, because GWH has announced an A10A and an A10C. So, I mean, the one thing we know with GWH is it's going to be massively more expensive than this one. But they are doing an A10A, which is, you know, the variant I want, because I'm really kind of mildly obsessed with the early Mask 10A grey schemes and the Jaws schemes. So very early A10s. Are you all right?
Yeah, that's all right. I could see something on my jacket and I couldn't figure out where it was.
It's a pattern. So, you know, I'm kind of mildly obsessed with sort of pre-1980 A10s. So I really want the early variant, the early A without the chaff and flare dispensers, and with an Escapac seat and all that kind of good stuff. Yeah, I mean, we know the GWH is going to be hugely more expensive, but we'll see what it we'll see what it brings. It's an A10, so I'm in the game. To be honest, Mike, I haven't even looked at the decals because I'm
just got to go and deal with something. Just bear with me,
because I'm doing the this one from the Caracal sheet. I haven't really looked at the decals. They're cartograph. Bear with. I mean, they're cartograph, so you know. You know, there's the sheet there. Some really nice things like chaff and flared bucket decals there, yeah, it's beautifully done. Full weapons stenciling and stuff. So I think, yeah, I don't know what the accuracy is like. Like I say, I haven't paid. My intention was always to do this in the Southeast Asia commemorative scheme. So because I've got no real interest in A10Cs otherwise, and you also get a sheet of masking for canopies and wheels, which I don't suppose you can see that, but if you catch it in the light, you can see where the where it's been cut out. So there's a full set of masking. No idea, Craig. No idea why there's 2 sets of. They are significantly different in. They are significantly different, but I don't know why. One I would suggest one's an A10A and one's an A10C, but that can't be right, because obviously the control panel has just got the instrument panel has just got the 2 MFDs for an A10C. So without looking back on mod states of A10s, so let's have a look. Trying to find the cockpit interior. I presumed it would be at the front, but bear with. Canopy, horizontal stabilizers, A10A cockpit. So yeah, I mean, I think those look to be for the A10A. A10A cockpit. A10A, A10A. There's the A10A Plus cockpit from the Modern Hog guide with the one MFD. And then the full up A10C cockpit, which is, you know, obviously as it's included in here. So it's remarkable looking at the throttle and stick, because that's exactly the throttle and stick I use for DCS. So yeah, it's a full up A10C. So that's what we have in there. So the decals are lice. You got masks, and as I said, I'll be using the 3D printed that, Mike, is the oh, let's go the other way. That's a Modern Hog guide by Reed Air. I think it's long out of print now, because this is as you can see, it's a 2007. So you might have to have a look around for it, but as you can see, it's all of Jake's stuff is phenomenally well done. So highly recommended. I do have the Viper guide somewhere, but I can't find it. I hate, because I'm also going to be doing the. I also want to do the Southeast Asia Viper as well. Yeah, Reed Air Publications. So yeah, that was that's the Academy A10. So that was the other thing. That was one of the other things I got yesterday after waiting a long time for that. So I'm not going to open the box on that, but it was very, very nice to get hold of this after waiting so long. A new tool, Sergeant York, which is very, very nice. And finally, I got the oh,
there we go.
I got the new Tack-on AH-64E. I wanted this boxing specifically because I really like the Indonesian two-tone green. Now, I did discuss this with John earlier. I'm not going to do an unboxing of this as such, because there are a quite ridiculous number of sprues in this box. And as you can see, it's an incredibly packed box. So it's, you know, what I don't want to be doing is taking stuff out of the box and then trying to get it all back in to bags and stuff. But you can see that the
is that all raised rivets and things on that as well?
Yep, it's recessed panel lines and entirely raised rivets and other detail. It is. Let's. I'm not going to open the main sprues, but let's have a look at a fuselage half just to. So yeah, it's absolutely stupendous piece of molding. It really is. It's absolutely beautiful. Tack-on have really come into their own in recent in the last few years, haven't they? But yeah, it's very fine raised rivets all over the airframe, raised detail where you've got hatches and stuff. And other stuff, and all the panel lines themselves are recessed. It's just And you've got all of these access panels and stuff that you'll see behind the engines when it's assembled, because you get full engines with it as well. It's just, you know, I think what did I pay? 89.99 for this. And given the cost of kits these days, I think that's a value. I think that's a value purchase.
Mm-hmm.
I really, really do. I will be waiting, because I'm sure that there's going to be 3D printed instruments and stuff, but you know, it's an incredibly complete package, and some very, very clever molding for things. There's a sugar scoop exhaust, so you get all the sugar scoop exhausts for this one, and also the normal conventional black holes. Things like the AH-64E Apache Guardian specific rotor blades, things like that. I mean, the EFABs come in their own bags, and a 3D printed set of aerials and other little details, which is the first time I've ever seen that in a model. They've actually, you know, 3D printing has reached the mainstream, shall we say? But yeah, it's so obviously there's there's multiple sheets of etch with it as well. There's flexible vinyl ammunition for the gun, and obviously this being the E of the world, the markings are specific for export Apaches. Like I said, I just you can see how much of a, I mean, it's already not going back in the way it came out.
So I'm surprised, because up until fairly recently, the Apache wasn't really on the radar for export. Now it seems any number of
well, you know, it's always been a very popular export for many years, really, John. But these are some really unique. So you've got a Korean Army one there in green, and the Saudi Arabian National Guard one just in green. But there's the Qatar Emery one there in two shades of brown.
Yeah,
which I think is a pretty helicopter.
Like that.
But I really like the Indonesian Army one, which is in a sort of pale or a light and dark green color, which is exactly the one that I will be doing from this. So yeah, it's when I went and looked for photographs of Indonesian Apaches, it was just I was instantly sold on doing that one. I've just got to do a bit of research to see if they've got the longbow radar, because that's showing specifically without the radar. So yeah, I mean, it's you know, there's 12-15 users of this helicopter now. You know, the Indians bought it. You know, it's there's been some, and the Australians are purchasing it to replace their Tigers, which have been pretty much an unmitigated disaster for them. So they've already decided that they're going to be buying Apaches to replace their Tigers. You know, the British Army bought 67 of the D model. They're buying 50, or having 50 upgraded to E's. So it's one of the helicopters that I actually inspect parts for at work. So parts come through me for that's phasing out now, as obviously the E was a direct purchase from Boeing rather than via Westland. So yeah, but you've got, you know, Egypt uses it, Israel uses it, so you know, you know, like here, Korea, Saudi. I think the Saudi Arabian Royal Saudi Air Force and the Saudi National Guard both use it. So it's been a very popular helicopter throughout the Persian Gulf and Middle East. And yeah, so it's a fantastic model. But you know, this is we seem to be shortly after this was announced. Then Meng announced their own AH-64, typical Tack-on Meng sort of thing. And then very recently, in the last sort of 4 weeks or so, the Academy have announced a 35th scale one as well. So, you know, we are moving into a positive glut of Apaches in 35th scale. So, yeah, I could do with another 48 scale one, really. Somebody wants to oblige at some point. Yeah, Mike, the Japanese operate the D, and I think they're due to get the E. The Dutch are upgrading their Ds to Es as well, I believe. So yeah, it's basically as the E model is what everybody's switching to now, as the D is being phased out of production. So now it's the AH-64E is what you get if you buy an Apache. So yeah, but yeah, a lot of users, a lot of different. Most of them are green, to be fair. But as you can see on that boxing I've got, there are some nice Apache schemes out there. You know, the Israeli ones are modified, and you know, Israel used AH-64As and Ds, and I think is due to get Es as well. So Israel has been a user of the Apache as the Piton for the A, Seraph for the D. So yeah, it's you're never going to go shy of Apache schemes, put it that way. And it's the world's premier gunship, isn't it? It's the world's premier attack helicopter, without a shadow of a doubt.
I say the Japanese operate theirs in camouflage, don't they?
Yep, the Japanese have a green brown with kind of black crow's feet on it. So I built that from the Hasegawa kit back in about 2010, I think. I did a Japanese one because they were some of the first people to get the what was it, the upgraded TADS and PMVS system. So
I know that because the Japanese ones were featured quite heavily in Shin Gojira from what, 6 years ago or so. Anyway, that's an aside. Dave Coward asks, can you do a UK version with all its additional lumps and bumps for the defensive systems?
Not the D model that's currently being phased out. No, they haven't done the parts for a D yet. So or an AH-1 as a UK, the AH-64Es that we're getting are foreign military sales. They are straight off the shelf. They are there will be some very small UK systems in them eventually, but they are basically. You know, if a US Army Apache pilot leapt out of his Apache and leapt into a UK Apache, he'd be completely familiar with it. There's nothing in it that's not they're straight. It's a straight off the shelf buy.
Here's an interesting question from John Connolly. He says, "Hi guys, just wondering, with all the superb high-tech kits we are getting these days, are we now becoming elite modelers? I find novice modelers are hating us just because we promote airbrushing over hand painting."
I don't promote airbrushing over hand painting. I just, it's what I do. And if you ask me, I mean, I've made this argument a million times. You know, maybe slight exaggeration, but the fact remains that perhaps 1%, maybe 2% of brush painters can get a finish anywhere approaching the quality that 75 to 80% of people airbrushing will get with very little practice.
Yeah.
That's just that's just the way it is. I don't think I've experienced any hate.
No. I'm going to say this idea that novice modelers are hating us just because we promote airbrushing over hand painting. I haven't encountered that either. And Steve Moores makes a very good point. He says, I think skills develop over time. We nearly all started with brushes. And
of course we did.
I would say that it's an aspirational thing. If you've got modelers who, kind of 10, 15, 20 years into their modeling hobby and they don't want to embrace the airbrush, that's down to them. It's not anything we should worry about in terms of modifying our approach and our technique. And I've seen this kind of commented on occasionally that it puts people off from engaging in the hobby if people are airbrushing all the time. I don't think so. I honestly don't think so.
It just doesn't occur to me. It just doesn't occur to me in any way, shape, or form as anything. I don't think about it unless it's mentioned. I don't think about it unless it's mentioned here. Mm-hmm. It's just airbrushes are what I do. I'm looking around. I've got 4 airbrushes within arm's reach right now. I moved years ago. I still do a lot of brush painting for details and stuff like that, but it's a basic fact that nearly everybody will get a better finish with an airbrush than they will with a paintbrush.
Spencer Pollard says, good evening, fellas. I hope you are both doing well. And yeah, I
hope the show was good, Spence. Hope you had a good day.
Yeah, absolutely. And James Tayton says, brush painters need to grab a mitt and get in the game. I mean, seriously, they get upset with airbrushes. It's an old one. I mean, I am very much a believer that people can engage in this hobby at whatever level they feel comfortable with. And we shouldn't kind of like shoot people down because they're not, they're not using airbrushes. It's kind of like, we don't want to do that. We want to keep this hobby as inclusive as possible. Having said that, though, there does sometimes seem to be a bizarre kind of, I don't know, airbrush envy coming from some people who are just kind of like, oh, well, we can't all airbrush, Well, you can, and it's not even, it's not even these days that people who say, oh, airbrushes are expensive and they're difficult to master. I wouldn't say they're difficult to master, but they're certainly not expensive. Like most things, it just takes practice. And yeah, I don't get it. I really don't get the.
I mean, not only do I not get it, I don't engage in it. It's just like, no. I'm not gonna discuss it with somebody over the pros and cons or accept criticism because I airbrush. I airbrush. Mm-hmm. If you don't want to airbrush, fine. That's fine. That's entirely down to you.
Yeah.
But I'm not going to apologise because of, I'm not going to apologise for how I pursue my hobby and how, if somebody asks me, I recommend the direction they go.
Yeah. Mike Williams says nothing wrong with brush painting. It's just a skill. It's a skill, just like airbrushing. Just don't call them hairy sticks. Oh, don't get me started on that phrase. I hate that phrase. I would
just hate. Is that all?
I would banish people who use use the term hairy sticks. Like funny. No, you're not. You are not funny at all. But yeah, I don't get it. And it's. I sometimes wonder whether, maybe brush painting is the more skillful way to go. Possibly.
But that to me, that's like arguing that, brush painting may be the more skillful way to go, but not everybody is Picasso. The vast majority of people who engage in painting pictures
Mm.
are never going to be hugely skillful artists, but they enjoy it.
Now, here's an interesting thing from Lox9. They say the main problem is a bit of dust falling in your wet paint or getting a thumbprint in it. I'd say you're probably going to be more likely to do that if you're brush painting than you are airbrushing.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah,
I think
it's just it is just one of those things that it comes with the territory. You just you deal with it.
Spencer makes a point. He says, here's the thing. To finish any model to a high standard, if that's your goal, you have to be proficient with a paintbrush. You simply cannot finish a model without those skills. They are not mutually exclusive. Brush painting has to be mastered every bit as much as airbrushing. I don't think
I mean, I wouldn't disagree, but I would be completely out of my depth if somebody told me to brush paint an entire model now. Because I haven't done it for 30 years or more. So I would be completely, you know, a model entirely brush painted by me would look awful. I know it would. But it's not something I'd do anyway because I'd use an airbrush for it. Yeah. So
here we go. Dave Mummery's tapped into the truth here, and he says some people just like to whinge about other people. And I think that's
difficult to disagree.
I think that's perfectly true. And Mike, see, this is a case in point. Mike Williams says, so I'm trying to get my thumb to work here. He says, folks say airbrushing is difficult. Well, my 10-year-old daughter is getting the hang of it, albeit she has a good teacher.
Well, and I think that's the thing, Mike, is because, you know, I mean, your son is being published in, you know, his articles are being published in magazines and stuff now. But you're an outlier, very much an outlier, I would suggest, in that, one, a lot of children don't really get as interested in modeling as their parents were. You've had it, obviously Ethan is as into it as you are. And he's got a you know, a skills base very, very local to him to fall back on. So I kind of like, I admire what Ethan does, whilst appreciating that in terms of his access to tutelage, he's an outlier.
We were talking about we were talking about Mike's daughter.
I know, but you know, again, it's the same thing applies, doesn't it?
I agree.
I agree. It's, you know, giving a 10-year-old girl an airbrush and saying get on with it would be the same as me when I was 10 years old. It would be, you know, undoubtedly there would be a quite a messy learning curve. Mike's daughter has got, you know, an immediately accessible, highly skilled person to fall back on for advice and tutelage.
Yeah, no, I agree.
Before anybody gets at me, that is not a criticism. I think that's fabulous. But it does kind of make you think they are, you know, they don't represent the majority, shall we say.
Paul Adams says we have 2 14-year-olds in our club, both proficient with an airbrush. Yeah, because the thing is, for a lot of them, it's just a tool. That's all it is. It's just a tool.
Yeah, that's all I think of it. That's all I, you know, because mine are just sat next to me, and you know, I just pick them up and use them whenever. You know, I would rather put a brush full of paint in that to spray, you know, something that's a few millimeters square than do it with a paintbrush. It's the way I like to. It's the way I like to do things. So I do.
No, I agree. I agree. You know, and it's. Yeah, I'm the same. I you know, this whole thing again. This is. Oh, we don't want to go down this rabbit hole, but this whole thing of, I think sometimes it's people who don't use airbrushes who like to throw all this kind of like, oh, they're difficult to use and it's difficult to clean up, and you spend more time cleaning the airbrush. And it's, you know, it's and you just go, well, it's not. Look, it's easy, you know, it's second nature, but they just give it all out all the time, and you just kind of go, right, well, fine. Airbrushing clearly isn't your thing, but please.
And a lot of them come into it with a negative attitude. And if you come into it with a negative attitude, you know you're not going to get anything out of it, are you?
Well, you're gonna
if you go into it having decided that it's not for you and it's not going to work, guess what? It's probably not going to work.
Mm-hmm. Or it's cheating. That was a comment I saw the other day. Somebody said, "Oh no, airbrushing is cheating," and it's like, is it? Okay, fine.
Yeah, again, I mean, I wouldn't even dignify that with a.
I didn't dignify it with a response.
I wouldn't even dignify it with a conversation.
Mm-hmm. And Lots9 says, once you have used an airbrush for a while, you get the hang of it. Distance from the model, air pressure, how much to thin the paint, what different paint brands like, what methods exactly. Yeah, I don't want to go down the rabbit hole of doing this whole thing yet again of kind of like airbrushing versus.
The main thing I hate is the cleanup. What cleanup? It takes 30 seconds. I can spray through that and have that clean and ready for the next color in 30 seconds, or chuck back on there ready for the next time I use it. Even the cleanup is a false critique, if you like.
Powell makes a good. He says driving a car is cheating. Horses are the correct way to travel. Funny thing is, I do actually know people who do have that attitude, which is exactly. Robert Johnson says, I like this one. He says building models is like problem solving with experiences. You get less paint on yourselves. And Christopher Joseph Buchholz says 30 seconds unless you're like me and forget to clean up every other session.
Yeah, I mean, the plus side of that, Chris, is you only build one model every 18 months. So
what's fighting talk that is.
I just think, Chris comes in and just wide open, isn't it? It's just that net was wide open. And I don't even like football, but I'm not going to turn that down, am I?
No. And John Connolly says, so just add to my post modeling magazines, don't promote hand painting on posts. I'm trying to figure out what he's saying here. He says, just to add to my post modeling magazines, don't promote hand painting on posts and don't promote it. Don't get that. I'm sure John will be along in a minute to clarify what he means. I'm sure it's nothing. It's nothing. Dark or anything. Don't you get all French with me, Christopher? Yes. Yeah, I think I understand what John's saying. But we didn't want to go down the rabbit hole of let's start talking about airbrushing again. But it's one of those things is that, like I say, it's such a second nature thing to me now that I can just pick an airbrush up and use it, and that's it. It's kind of like I don't even have to think about it. I'm just that's it, done. Right, here we go.
Well, I think you're saying that you don't see magazines posting much brush painted models. No, you don't.
No,
because it's not 1975.
A lot of the readership have not evolved, but a lot of the readership now are used to using airbrushes.
Yeah, and what I see I want stuff that I see in magazines to be aspirational. I think one of the first aspirations of modeling is improving your surface finish, which invariably means using an airbrush.
I always remember that was a I don't want to. Sounds like I'm kind of dissing. Yeah, exactly. Craig Sargent says Mike McAvoy will be turning in his grave. I don't want to sound like I am dissing legends here, but Mike was very much of the opinion that he wasn't very airbrush friendly. Alan, this is the bizarre thing. Alan Hall, right? Alan W. Hall, back in the 60s and 70s, he was one of the earliest proponents of using airbrushes. And you see some of his conversion work, and it's got, he's airbrushed the finish on it. It's brilliant. Then he suddenly he did a U-turn and just
Yes.
forever was going on about hand painting and how, you know, and you know, I don't want to alienate my readers by airbrushing or whatever, despite the fact that Jim Howard was doing airbrush models in the magazine, and I somewhere, that it makes me sound as I'm kind of, I've got a bit of a grudge here, but somewhere I've got a rejection letter from Uncle Alan, in which he said, you know, thank you very much for your submission. Unfortunately, many of our readers prefer to hand paint, and I noticed you airbrush. And I remember thinking to myself, well, hang about, you've had people airbrushing in the magazine before. What? I don't get it. I don't get it. And Clint Dold says, I have had some people tell me that when they were really struggling with airbrushes. Then I found out they started with water-based acrylics. I had a water-based letter, and 95% of their issues were gone. Exactly. And Lox9 says there's one negative with brush painting: it uses too much paint. Yeah, well, okay, fine. Dave Fleming says Alan W. Hall just didn't like you. No, I think he liked me, but I did kind of bowl into his office, kind of like a slightly kind of long-haired, modeler who probably didn't conform to his ideas of what a modeling journalist should be. So never mind. That was 30 years ago. So, you know,
moving on.
Yeah, I've left it behind me now. No, it's bizarre, utterly bizarre. Anyway, good Lord, we haven't even got round to doing our Trumpeter Hobby Boss thing tonight, which we were going to do, but we will do that at some stage during the week. Are you around during the week, Drew?
Yeah, should be. Yeah.
Okay, we'll do the Trumpeter Hobby Boss rundown on Wednesday. But beyond that, we are going to have to keep it to quite a strict hour tonight. So, any other business?
No, not from me. Watch your space for the A10. Hopefully, we'll see where I've got to on Wednesday.
Yeah. Couple of Jim Altergott. Here we go. Jim Altergott says the whole affair started with a comment about model kits getting a bit too high level in detail and thus leaving the beginner behind. Not true. Absolutely, Jim. It's not true. I don't know why modelers sometimes put up these self-imposed barriers like that. I don't get it. It's honestly, I can understand why individuals don't want to do things, but this conflating of it as being a truism across the hobby, I don't understand. Crazy Loca, he's got it there. He says, personal enjoyment is what this hobby is all about. Yeah, absolutely. And I don't get it. I really don't get it. It's a broad enough church that there's plenty of room for all of us, and different approaches and different techniques, and you name it.
But we'll be having this discussion at least once again this year.
At least once. Anyway, right. That'll do for now. We're gonna love you and leave you in a very brief, just over an hour. Yes. Would you believe?
Literally an hour.
But we'll be back midweek, and what we're going to do midweek is we are going to look at the Trumpeter and Hobby Boss new items for 2023, of which there are quite a few on there. So we will come back to that. So I haven't got anything. So there we go. Crazy Loca says, I really enjoyed Drew's assessment of the A10C. Thanks.
You're most welcome.
Yeah, absolutely. Right. Well, just to say thank you to Drew for joining us tonight. Thank you to everybody who tuned in. Very kind of you. Thank you very much. We'll be back midweek for the midweek review. So until then,
See you then.
Stay safe, stay out of trouble, and I was going to say, don't have nightmares. That's the other show I do. Mind you, if you watch this show, maybe. Anyway, stay safe, stay out of trouble, and we'll see you
soon.
on the next one. So, bye for now.
Boom.